saw from the roof, leaning over the edge, the face of a very old woman with white hair looking down at them. When they realized that she was watching them, the old woman hid backward as if she were crawling or sliding quickly across the roof. Very good evening, community. For all those special people like us who continue listening to ghost stories, you and I are going to focus on the darkest stories of the year. Today we have 3 great tales for you. And of course they come as specials because there are many reasons to celebrate. That's the caliber of this community. For now, it's time to close your eyes and let yourself go, because you're already listening to Tales of the Night. Hello, good evening, community. My name is Francisco Alvarado, and I want to tell you about something that happened to me a little while ago. About 2 months ago, I work in a factory that's outside the city on a highway where there are no houses or anything, just wilderness and a bridge before arriving. I clock in at 5 o'clock sharp, but several times I leave earlier because I drop off my husband at the hospital for some treatments. When that happens, I end up arriving at 4:15 when they haven't even opened the parking lot yet. And this day that I'm going to tell you about, I did the same as always. I was just crossing the bridge with the car, still at low speed, when I saw something that I truly never thought I'd see at that hour. A child. A child sitting on the edge with his little legs dangling into the void as if he were waiting. I don't know, the moment to jump. I thought I was hallucinating or that it was someone playing, but it was 4 o'clock in the morning. There wasn't a soul around there. No cars pass at that hour, and there are no houses there. There's nothing. When I got closer to him, he turned. He didn't move completely. He just turned his head slowly. And when the headlights hit his face, his eyes shone as if he had something in them. I don't know how to explain it, but they shone. They didn't reflect the light. They were shining in a very strange way. I felt something horrible, something I couldn't recognize in the moment. I just accelerated a little more, without braking, without turning again. I passed the bridge and kept going straight. I repeated to myself 100 times that it must have been a child who had left his house. But the thing is, nobody lives there. He would have had to come from very, very far away. I arrived at the point where I always park, there where I stay waiting for them to open. I turned off the car, reclined the seat, and tried to forget what I saw. I forced myself to think that I was tired, that my mind played a macabre trick on me. I closed my eyes and just tried to sleep for a little while. I don't know how much time passed, but I do know that I was falling asleep when I heard the door. It wasn't a knock. It wasn't a scrape. They were trying to open it. I heard the pull clearly. Like when someone wants to open and pulls the handle with a lot of force. I woke up suddenly with my heart in my throat, and the first thing I thought was, they've already seen me asleep and they're going to rob me. I sat up and went outside. I looked out carefully in all directions, in every direction, but there was nobody. And when I say nobody, it's nobody. There's nothing nearby. There's absolutely nothing. There are no stores, no cars pass by, there are no bus stops. Around me there was only empty highway and darkness. I stayed still, listening without moving. I rolled down the window a little bit, but nothing else could be heard. I didn't hear or feel footsteps. I didn't see shadows. I didn't hear anyone running. Nothing. I stayed there sitting, with my heart still racing, looking everywhere through the mirrors. When they opened the parking lot, it was empty, spacious, and I felt a little calmer. Like when dawn breaks and you think you imagined everything. Things look much easier when the sun comes out. I got out of the car, closed the door, and that's when I saw on the paint, exactly on the door that they had tried to open. Little hands. There were little hands painted. Little hands like a child's. Marked. Perfect. As if they had been pressed hard. They weren't dirty with mud. or grease, or dirt from the road. They were painted like white, like made with chalk or school paint. Two very clear ones drawn exactly as if they had tried to open it. I stood there staring at them for a while. I didn't even know what to do. I couldn't say anything at work because how do you explain it? How do you say that you saw a child on a bridge in the dark and that then someone or something tried to open your door and left their hands marked? I cleaned them later in the afternoon when I left. And yes, they came off, but it was difficult. As if they had been there a long time, as if they had been there long before that night. For now I haven't gone through the bridge so early again. If I have to take my wife to the hospital, when I drop her off, I go to work, but I stay on the side of the highway before reaching the bridge. There I park and I sleep, but I don't go near that stretch when it's still so dark. It scares me a lot, a terrible fear to see him again. Hello, Tales of the Night. My name is Carolina, and I want to tell you about something that happened to me. It's one of those things that if I think about them quickly, I can still say, maybe it was a coincidence. But when I put all the pieces together, it becomes more difficult to dismiss. I'm from a small town in Michoacan. I lived there all my life with my parents and my siblings. I had never left home until I was accepted to the University of Morelia. My parents were very proud, but also very nervous because I'm the oldest, the first in the family to study at university, and the first to go to the city. They knew they couldn't be paying me very high rent, so we started looking for a house that was more or less close to the school, but that could later accommodate more roommates so that we could all pay together. In the end, we found a little house on a quiet street, a few blocks from an avenue where vans and little stores pass by. It's not downtown, but it wasn't lost either. It was an old one-story house with a facade, a little neglected but nothing extraordinary. Metal gate, a little window on one side and once inside, a small hallway that led to a patio and the rooms. The plan was for me to stay the first few months alone, and then when I made trusted friends at the university, I could invite them to share the house. The strange thing for me from the beginning was feeling that house too silent. In my town, I always heard dogs, roosters, radios, people talking at all hours. Not there. Sometimes cars would pass by. But at night it was almost pure echo of my own steps, as if people weren't awake so late there. The house had 3 rooms. One faced the street, and I took that one because I loved watching people pass by. Another faced the patio, and the third was at the back, next to a bathroom, which seemed to be added later with different tiles. The living room and dining room were almost empty, like old sofas that the last tenants left, and a plastic table. I brought my mattress, my wardrobe, my things, and at first, I was excited. And it's that it was the first time I had a room all to myself, especially in another place. I want to clarify from now so you don't expect anything else that I have never seen or heard anything strange or directly. I never saw a shadow. I never heard a voice. Nothing. Everything I'm going to tell comes from other people who felt, heard, and saw things there. And precisely that, me not being able to see, is what scares me the most. Well, the point is that the first few weeks were normal. Going to university, coming back, doing homework, video calling my parents. I was excited, but I also felt very alone. My friends from high school stayed in town, and although we talked, it's not the same. In one of those weeks I met Gerard, a guy from school. We started talking in a class, then in the cafeteria, and one day he asked me if I wanted to go to the movies. I accepted, obviously, and we agreed on a Saturday downtown. We went to a movie theater in the historic center. We walked for a while through the cobblestone streets, watched the show, went out for something to drink, and honestly, I had a really good time. It wasn't a date like that, super romantic, but it did feel like there was some chemistry. At least that's what I thought. It was kind of late when we took transportation back. He got off with me at the stop near my house because he still had a while to walk to his, and he told me he would walk me to the door. I thanked him because although the street wasn't dangerous, it was very lonely at that hour. I remember that walk very well, and we're talking about random things, teachers, homework, faculty gossip. I felt like everything was flowing well. We arrived at the gate of the house and I was nervous. I didn't know if he was going to say goodbye with a handshake, hug you, or what. I stopped in front of the door, thanked him for walking me, and turned to look at him. And there I saw that his face had completely changed. He looked in other directions. He didn't hold my gaze. He couldn't look me in the eyes. I asked him if everything was okay and he said yes, but that he had to go. He didn't hug me or anything. He turned around and left walking fast, without looking back. I stood there for a second not understanding what had happened. I wanted to think that maybe he remembered something that made him feel bad. I don't know. According to me, I hadn't done anything. I went into the house. I went into my room. I changed. I went to sleep with that strange feeling, but without imagining what had really happened. The next day I sent him a message like nothing had happened. I told him thank you for the outing, that I had a great time. He saw the message but didn't answer me. Weeks went by and at school he started avoiding me. If I was in the group, he would go with another. If I greeted him, he barely responded. I started going over the matter 1,000 times thinking about what I had said or done wrong, until one day, after a class, we left almost at the same time. And for the first time in all that time, I couldn't avoid us being face to face at the classroom door. I took a deep breath and approached him. "Hey," I said, "did I do something to you really? If something I did or said bothered you, I'd rather you tell me and that's it." Gerardo got uncomfortable, looked everywhere making sure nobody was listening. Then he sighed as if resigned. "No, you didn't do anything," he said. "I just don't want to have problems." That phrase hit me even worse, and I didn't understand it. "Problems with whom?" I asked. He stayed quiet for a few seconds and finally, in a low voice, he let out, "Do you live with your mom?" I felt like my head was emptying in that moment. I told him, trying not to sound angry, "Gerard, my mom doesn't even live in Morelia." "What's wrong with you?" He laughed, but without humor, and answered me. "Carolina, do you think I'm making things up?" I saw them. I remember perfectly how he nailed that phrase into me. I saw them. "Who?" I told him. Then when it came to me, when I had my back to my house, behind me in the window, he could see how a woman was combing a girl's hair. I felt something tighten in my chest when he told me, but I didn't answer anything, and he continued, "I thought it was your mom with your sister or an aunt. I don't know, but they didn't look normal." The woman was pulling the girl's hair. Very badly. The girl had her face like clenched, enduring the pain. And I didn't want to look much, honestly, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw how the woman was giving her really bad pulls. He was quiet for a second, and then lowered his voice even more. Suddenly, the two of them stopped looking down and turned together to look at me. The woman grabbed the girl's hair even tighter, as if she were showing me that she could pull it more. And with the other hand, she ran her finger across her neck slowly, like making a signal of cutting her throat. And all this without stopping looking at me. I don't know how long I stayed quiet. The only thing I had to answer him was, there was nobody in that room. There was nobody in the house that night. Nobody lived there but me. Gerardo looked at me with a face that mixed fear, discomfort, and some pity. "Oh no. Well, then it's worse. But I'm not going to get involved in that. Sorry, Caro, but I don't want trouble with anything, with whatever is there in your house." And he left, and this time I did know that he wasn't going to talk to me the same way again. That day I left the faculty like on automatic. I took the van to my house, opened the gate, went in and stood in the living room looking towards my room. I closed the curtains on the window that faces the street, as if with that I could erase the image he had described to me. Shortly after that, the roommates I was waiting for finally arrived, guys from other majors who also came from out of town and needed a place to live. One is called Mariana and the other Fair. To this day, great friends. At first everything was cool, each one with their room. We agreed on the rent, the services, who takes out the trash and those things. I didn't tell them anything about what Gerardo told me, because honestly I didn't know how to bring it up without sounding crazy. Besides, I thought that if I didn't feel anything strange, maybe there was some explanation for what he saw, or that he was simply suggestible. But it didn't take long before the topic came up on its own. One night, the three of us are in the kitchen, having dinner in one of those where you keep talking while you wash the dishes, check your phone, and it's already gotten late without realizing it. Finals just passed and we're more relaxed than usual. I don't know how it came up, but I ended up telling them about the date, and I started with the normal thing that I had gone out with a guy who suddenly got weird, who then avoided me. And then their faces got indignant for me. But then I talked to him and he told me why he walked away, and I want to tell you, just so you can tell me if it sounds too crazy. And then I told them exactly what I just told you. The woman combing the girl, the pulls, the look, the sign on the neck. When I finished, they both stared at me with their mouths half open. "Are you kidding?" said Mariana. "No," I said. "Why or what?" Fer let out a nervous laugh and said, "Caro, this house is super haunted. We thought you already knew." And there I did feel fear. Not because they told me haunted, but because of the way they said it. It didn't sound like a joke. It sounded like something they had talked about before between them. "What do you mean haunted? What have you felt?" I asked them. Mariana was the first to speak. "I haven't seen anything, but since I arrived I can tell you that almost every night I hear like a girl crying, like it comes from the closet." A knot formed in my throat when I heard that. I asked her if she was talking about the closet in her room. "Yes, and you're not going to believe me, but I even put a chair at night blocking the door so it doesn't open. I know it seems ridiculous, but I can't sleep if I don't have the door like that." Then Fair said, "Mine was different. One time I stayed alone because you guys went to your houses for the weekend. I went to shower late, like at 11. I was calm, with the door closed, when out of nowhere I felt a really strong hit on my face. A slap like that, direct and not with an open hand, normal, but hard. It left my face burning. I thought I had hit myself with something, but there was nothing. She touched her cheek as she remembered it. I listened to them and felt like I was getting smaller in my chair. "But did you never see anyone?" I asked. Then Fair answered, "Let's see. I didn't, but my friends did." She explained that a couple of times friends of hers and Mariana's had come to do homework or watch movies, and that more than one, when they went out to smoke in the patio, when they were arriving, had turned to look at the window of my room and asked things like, "Hey, I say your roomie was leaning out the window. Who's with you? I thought you were alone, but I saw someone in the window." And they always referred to the same place, to the same window, the one that faces the street, the same one where Gerard had seen the woman with the girl. Mariana looked at me strangely and asked me if I had really never heard anything, and I just shook my head. I told them that the strangest thing I had felt was discomfort with the silence, especially when I was alone, but nothing more. No crying, no people at the window, nothing. "Well, that's good, honestly," said Fair. "Maybe you're not sensitive, but that doesn't mean it's not happening." And that phrase stayed engraved in me because that's exactly the problem. To this day I can't say this happened to me, such and such a thing inside that house, but I can no longer walk through the hallway at night without imagining Mariana's closet, with the chair touching the door, or the bathroom where someone slapped Fair without there being anyone in the house, or my own window where, according to others, someone always appears. Always. Obviously, I have never seen the woman, much less the girl, nor have I heard her crying, nor has she touched me. But I do know that there's something there because too many people have seen and felt very specific things for everything to be a coincidence. And the worst thing isn't seeing something. The worst thing, at least for me, is knowing that if there is something in that house, I will never know at what moment it's a meter away from me, at what moment it's trying to talk in my ear and I'm not even aware. I just wanted to share it with you. Maybe someone in the community has lived through something similar. Houses where everyone sees things except the one who lives there. And that, although it sounds strange, gives a different fear because you don't know if you're the most fortunate or the most exposed. I would love to know how to start seeing. Hello. Good evening, community. My name is Julio, and although I've only been listening to you for a little while, I want to tell something that in my family was never forgotten. It didn't happen to me, but to my parents. But they told it so many times that it seems like I was also there. When they moved to the city many years ago, they had to live as they could. Houses with dirt floors, humidity everywhere, and holes in the walls that let the cold in at night. They never complained because it was the first thing they could afford, but they did have a very hard time at the beginning. After that, someone offered them to stay in another house near that same area. It wasn't pretty. And the strange thing wasn't the peeling paint or the old glass, or that it looked like a workshop because of the high windows that didn't let you see outside. The strangest thing was how high the ceiling was. The owner warned them when giving them the key to stay on the first floor, not to go up, that there was nothing upstairs. And that, of course, caught their attention, because there was an old cement staircase without a railing, but it was there between the kitchen and the living room, without going anywhere. Dark up above, ending in a metal door closed with a padlock. And you could tell it hadn't been opened in a long time because it was covered with dust, cobwebs and rust marks like from water that had dripped from inside. And from the first night there were signs of what they were about to experience, and that was beyond the terrible cold it was. You see, my mom stayed alone and my dad came back at 3 o'clock from his work. He says he got off the van like nothing and walked the 6 dark blocks to the house. When he entered, he found my mom sitting on the edge of the bed, trembling, crying with fear, and she could barely tell him that there was someone upstairs. She whispered as if afraid they would hear her, and said she was sure that something was walking, going around. My dad tried to calm her down. He told her that it must be the sheets moving from the wind, but she insisted that it couldn't be something like that. What she heard were clearly footsteps. They were, and not fast steps. Slow steps like with patience, letting themselves be heard, going around once and again and again. My dad went out to see, but from below nothing could be distinguished. You could only see the very high and black ceiling. There were no stairs outside, no way to climb up, no accesses from the first floor. And outside there were no stairs either, no nearby walls, no houses attached within 60 meters around. There was nothing. The following nights were the same. My dad acted strong, but my mom barely slept. She always had to wait alone until the early morning when my dad arrived. The footsteps returned, and the worst was when they were no longer just footsteps. Sometimes she heard like a dragging, like something heavy moving. And one night, laughter. Laughter that wasn't afraid to hide, like the footsteps. Whatever was upstairs wanted them to notice. And my dad finally got fed up. One Thursday at 2:30, when the footsteps sounded again, just when he was arriving, he went up the stairs, hit the metal door with all his strength. The laughter stopped, the footsteps too. Then he came down and stayed listening from the first floor, without breathing. Nothing else was heard for the whole early morning. Not a scrape, not a weight moving. The next day he asked for tools at the construction site where he worked. That night, when something sounded upstairs again, he went up again. He forced the padlock with a hammer and a screwdriver. The door opened and what he saw was nothing. An empty room in the middle of the rooftop, without a roof without windows, without anything, without signs of anyone there, and without signs of how anyone could have climbed up. But my mom didn't calm down. On the contrary, she continued stressed. But at least the nights passed without noises. For the first time, they could sleep straight through. However, one Saturday, after visiting some friends, very late, when they were walking towards the house, they saw her for the first time. They saw her. My dad says that at first he thought it was a bundle, a sack, something forgotten that seemed to come out of the roof. But it wasn't. It was a face. From the roof, leaning over the edge, the face of a very old woman with white hair looking down at them. When they realized that she was watching them, the old woman hid backward, as if she were crawling or sliding quickly across the roof. And that night, they didn't want to go in. They didn't dare take one more step towards their house. They went back without looking back. They reached the highway and took a taxi. They returned to their friend's house and asked them to stay that night. Luckily, they accepted. The next day, they went to talk to the owner and ask her what was up there, who or what lived on that roof. They told her they forced a door, that they went up to the roof, and what they saw there. The woman got angry. First, she yelled at them for opening the door that she had specifically forbidden them. Then she told them they should leave as soon as possible, without further explanation, and they accepted without arguing. They just wanted to get their things and they would go. When they were already carrying what little they had and were walking with difficulty towards the highway, some children from the area passed by and asked them, "Did you live in the witch's house?" My dad says he tried not to listen to that, but the children continued. "The witch lives on the roof. Sometimes she leans out. Sometimes she takes big jumps to land on other roofs and takes kittens or dogs. That's why they throw stones at her, so she doesn't come close, so she doesn't do anything to us." They said no more. They asked no more. They went to continue playing. Many years later, I learned the story from my parents' conversations. They both told it separately and very differently. My mom never wanted to tell it. The memory hurt her a lot. My dad made it more exciting, more entertaining, but they both told it with the same details. Just like that. Today, my mom is no longer here, and since then, my dad kind of stopped telling it. But from time to time, he remembers it in a single comment to describe it, to describe that moment in his life. That memory, he refers to it as the witch's house, the roof.